Welcome to Hawksong Weaving. My name is Took. I'm a disabled weaver who works exclusively with thrift store or secondhand yarn, and today I'll be weaving a scarf made from donated yarn and losing it yarn chicken. I hope you enjoy. Life takes odd turns, but even tattered and worn yarn still has value. Tired joints and health flares don't have to stop the journey. Welcome to Hawksong Weaving, where all our paths are a little bit warped. The navy blue merino blend of the warp and the brown alpaca blend of the main body of the scarf were both donated by a customer of the Hawksong Weaving vending tent at different events. As in, this customer, who didn't want to be named or share her socials for a shout out, and that's entirely valid, saw my work at one event, heard that I took donations, and then came back the next weekend at a different event, and then handed me back a bag of really nice yarn that she needed to destash. I'll never stop being surprised when this happens, but it's such a great feeling when it does. A bit of an explanation on why I've developed this adaptive warping method. I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which has cascaded into postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So, for time's sake, know that I have joints that don't work, and if I shift positions too quickly, I get pre-syncope or pre-fainting symptoms. All of this comes along with chronic pain, so for a lot of reasons, a traditional warping board doesn't work for me, along with being really expensive and taking up a lot of space in my small studio. So I use an accordion coat rack as my warping board. It's nice and neat, it contracts into a nice smaller space, and I can adjust it as I need to. And I don't need to be up and down and all around and having tachycardia, a racing heart, that stresses out my medical alert cat Penelope. With the warp threads sorted, I'm lifting up the loom to release the warping board from the loom, gathering the warp threads into one large bundle and using the back of my neck to drape them up and over and keep them tidy and out of the way, while I collapse the warping board and get it tucked out of the way until I'm at a full pause point where I can get it unclamped from my desk. I use terry cloth towels to cushion the warp threads. This helps prevent the finished weaving from being tighter at the ends and looser in the middle, creating a sort of sausage profile in the weaving. And of course we have Penelope Calico, the HR and OSHA cat of Hawksong Weaving, out in the background. I love her little pantaloons. She has a very fluffy posterior, and she's fluffy in general, which can give the illusion that she is larger than she actually is. I love her so much, but I'm never getting another calico ever again. It's like having a border collie and a husky in the body of a cat, and the problem is, regarding her medical alert catness, is that she's always right. The way I warp has me cutting the warp loops at the end of winding the warp. This is what's easiest on my body. It won't work for everyone, but that's okay. This isn't a great angle, but I'm being careful to pay attention to how the warp threads are lying on the back bar of the loom, and the right hand thread goes through the smaller hole in the rigid heddle reed. It's not critical, and some minor mistakes aren't the end of the world, but it does make it easier to keep the tension of the warp threads even across the entire weaving. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you'd like to support my work, some free ways to do that are to like, subscribe, or follow, and share, and of course comment. This applies to other small artists as well. It's a great way to let the social media algorithms know that this is content worth watching. If you'd like to support me financially, per viewer request, there's a Buy Me a Coffee linked below, along with the link to the Hawksong Weaving Square site where you can purchase unique woven products. I do have a Patreon, however I am debating on whether or not I'm going to be able to keep up with it long term, so Buy Me a Coffee is most likely the way to go. I'd love to hear some feedback from folks if an Amazon wish list might be welcome. I'm still figuring this out and figuring out my workflows and what's going to be sustainable for me long term as a disabled artist. Attaching the warp to the bottom apron bar is pretty easy. I finger comb it, get it separated into bits about 4 to 5 warp threads wide, separate these bits into 2, and then do a half hitch tie to the apron bar. Tightening things up at the various edges with the various handles and cinching things as needed helps make sure that the tension is right for a warp. I prefer to weave at a fairly high tension. Most people don't weave at this tension, but it does make a difference when you're picking out your yarn, so be careful. For this scarf, I'm doing my favorite pickup stick pattern. For this pattern, I put the rigid heddle in the down position on the loom and feed a shuttle behind the rigid heddle, picking up every alternate warp. Then the weaving is 1 down, 1 back, pickup stick push to the front, 1 back, and then back to 1 down. I love this pickup stick pattern. It's one I do a lot as it creates a different pickup pattern on each side of the fabric and it weaves together very easily and quickly. It also allows me to stack more slippery yarn on top of itself and keep it pinned in between the warp threads instead of relying on the warp and weft binding immediately like a basket weave. That's less of a concern with this yarn, but it is a nice feature. The gray and brown yarn was given to me by my friend Avery, who is also an artist in Northampton. We'll be doing some art collaboration, so I'm looking forward to that down the line. I'll link their Instagram down below. As I got to the end of this scarf, I realized that I didn't have enough of the alpaca blend yarn to go the entire length of my warp, which wasn't the end of the world, but was annoying enough for me to put the scarf down for the weekend and go have a good time with my partners. One of my partners and I love this Amherst Farmers Market, especially getting egg sandwiches from the Egg & Company booth. Remember my video last week where I explained transgender egg references? Well, this is peak transgender humor and a really good sandwich. After that, we picked up our girlfriend for a surprise hot pot excursion. She had been told that we were getting a nice meal, but not where we were going. We had a really good time. The hot pot place closest to us is Kieran in Springfield, Massachusetts. We got Virgin's pina coladas and avoided getting caught in the rain until we got back home. At which point I bit the bullet, accepting that I lost at Yarn Chicken and did another border on this end before tying off the scarf fringes. For tying off the scarf fringes, I prefer to do 2x2 warps tied into a fringe of 4, but will do a double sliding knot of 3 if I don't have a wide enough warp. I steam block my wool blend scarves. This helps the wool fibers to soften into each other and relax into the weave. Without blocking, you can get wrinkles because the weave tends to be stiff without the added heat and water. Once the steam blocking is finished, I eyeball the length of the fringe that I want and use the "don't ask me how much I spent on these good shears" and trim it. The final step is between half an hour and 45 minutes of tying the fringe knots. And of course, Hades Himbo decided that the scarf was a box and that he needed to sit on it. He has been peeled for the summer, he's freshly shorn, and he has been living life so much better now that he doesn't have that weight. He's been having zoomies for the first time in months. He looks quite silly and more like a pit bull than I ever imagined given his house hippo-ness, but he is doing so much better, and it's better to do it at home where he'll be less scared and traumatized because he is my scaredy cat of a boy. But despite his silliness, he is actually really loving this haircut, and I'm really glad that I was able to do this for him. Thank you for coming along with me as I wove this scarf from different donated yarns. I'm so glad for the odd turn your path took that brought you here. Thank you for spending time with me at Hawksong Weaving, where we're all a bit warped, and I hope that you have a truly excellent week.